A heavy silence hangs in the air as a noble man and woman sit across from each other at a long table. The man breaks the tension with a cruel confession, stating his only mistake was realizing she wasn't the woman he truly loved. Without hesitation, he declares his intention to cancel their engagement, addressing her coldly as Charlotte Maru. Charlotte's hands tremble in her lap, her fists clenching tight as she processes the sudden rejection. Internally, she realizes with a pang of despair that Crown Prince Theodore Rivera never loved her at all. She attempts to salvage the moment, softly denying his claim and professing her deep affection for him. Theodore slams the table in a sudden fit of rage, the violence of his movement cutting off her words. He screams at her to stop with the hollow courtesies, his patience completely exhausted. Charlotte remains silent, her expression guarded as she endures his outburst. He sneers at her, admitting he is sick of looking at her stiff and mask-like face. Pointing an accusatory finger, he directs his disgust toward the scent she wears. He cruelly remarks that the sweet fragrance clinging to her always makes him nauseous. Charlotte quietly explains that the perfume is a precious keepsake from her late mother. Ignoring her explanation, Theodore demands to know why she only ever shows that same silent smile. He reveals he wants a wife who laughs when happy and cries when sad, claiming that is what true love looks like. His gaze turns icy as he questions her ability to feel anything at all. He complains that her constant, unreadable smile makes it impossible to know what she is thinking. Charlotte remains composed on the outside, her smile never wavering despite his harsh words. Internally, she notes that she knows his tells perfectly, recognizing his furrowed brow means anger and his touched cheek reveals a lie about falling for another woman. She realizes with sorrow that while she did her best for him, he never cared for her in return. Softly, she addresses him again as Your Highness, trying to reach him one last time. She warns him that the commoner woman he loves cannot be his lawful wife due to the vast status difference, only a mistress. Theodore furiously asserts his future authority, shouting that he is the man who will one day become king. He demands the right to marry the woman he loves as Charlotte reflects on how everything began to fall apart last year. Flashbacks reveal how the prince started using inspection trips as a cover to frequently visit the city. Suspicious of his movements, a cloaked Charlotte wonders where he could possibly be going. Although she didn't want to doubt him, curiosity drove her to follow him secretly into a back alley. She freezes upon hearing a familiar voice, watching Theodore gently greet someone he came to see. He tenderly calls out to his beloved Verona, his voice full of an affection Charlotte never received. The scene hangs in a momentary void, bridging the gap between her suspicion and the crushing truth. Charlotte watches in heartbreak as Theodore smiles radiantly at another woman, looking happier than she has ever seen him. The reality of the betrayal strikes her hard, her eyes widening in shock as rain begins to fall. She stands paralyzed in the downpour, unable to believe the scene unfolding before her is real. Theodore holds Verona close, their intimacy undeniable and shattering Charlotte's world. Suddenly, Theodore notices her presence, his expression shifting as he calls out her name in surprise. Back in the present, Charlotte recalls how he simply turned his back on her that day, reiterating that his lack of love for her is the only issue. Trying to negotiate a political solution, she suggests she remain the lawful wife while he keeps the other woman. She proposes he take Verona as a concubine or mistress, hoping to preserve the alliance. Theodore's hand jerks forward, the contents of his glass flying through the air in a sudden, violent arc. The water strikes her with a harsh splash, soaking her clothes in an instant display of his contempt. Water drips from her soaked form as she sits silently under his humiliating assault. Theodore roars at her, warning her not to dare give him such foolish orders. Wet and humiliated, Charlotte looks down, her hair clinging to her face as she bears his fury. She tries to reason internally that he needs her family's support against his brother's strong political backing to secure the throne. Theodore cuts off her train of thought, screaming for silence and declaring the engagement null and void regardless of the consequences. He scoffs that he has no use for a woman who won't even shed a tear in a moment of such disgrace. He thrusts the annulment document toward her, finalizing his rejection. Charlotte realizes she cannot reveal her true abilities, leaving her no choice but to submit to his demands. Maintaining her dignity, she accepts his decision, reaffirming her respect and affection one last time. She bows her head deeply, thanking him for everything despite the cruelty of the dismissal. Theodore turns away without a backward glance, his cape swirling as he leaves her behind. Charlotte muses that Prince Theodore was like the sun to her, bright and unreachable. She admired his spontaneity and genuine emotions, seeing in him everything she lacked. However, she acknowledges that to him, she was nothing more than a masked woman without a real face. She understands he loved Verona because she shone with a warmth that was the complete opposite of her own shadow. An image of a cracked mask and a rose symbolizes the fracture of her persona and the end of their relationship. A single tear traces down her cheek, the first crack in her perfect composure. She steels herself, deciding that his opinion no longer concerns her now that the tie is severed. Stepping into her carriage, she prepares to leave the palace and her life as the future queen behind. Her attendant rushes to her side, urging her to calm down and breathe deeply. Charlotte clutches her chest, her body trembling as the suppression of her emotions takes its toll. She worries about her future as a duke's daughter with her specific ability, fearing a life of forced emotional suppression in this kingdom. Breaking down at last, she sobs that she can't bear it anymore and just wants a place to live in peace. A final close-up shows her eye closing in exhaustion, resignation settling over her as she seeks escape. A gentle smile graces Charlotte's face as she realizes the answer to her predicament is to marry into the barren lands. Clouds part to reveal a brilliant sun, symbolizing the clarity of her newfound resolve. A lone carriage travels through a misty, mountainous landscape, marking the beginning of her journey away from her past. In the royal throne room, the king solemnly asks Duke Maru if nothing can be done regarding his daughter's situation. The king regrets that the crown prince submitted the annulment papers himself, leaving no room for negotiation. Duke Maru bows his head in silence, accepting the immutability of the king's decree. The duke remains quiet, his expression grim as he listens to his sovereign. The king questions if the duke has nothing to say in his defense, prompting a flashback to the prince's earlier outburst. In the flashback, Prince Theodore screams at his father, demanding to know why he cannot marry the woman he loves. He furiously complains that Charlotte is an emotionless woman and declares that neither of them loves the other. Theodore slams his hand down violently, the sound echoing his refusal to accept the arranged marriage. The king sternly asks his son if he is blind, questioning if he truly never noticed Lady Charlotte's sincerity and devotion. His rebuke cuts deep as he calls the prince a blind boy for failing to see the truth. The king suspects Charlotte has inherited her mother's power, but Theodore dismisses the notion and storms out. Returning to the present, Duke Maru apologizes for his son's disrespectful behavior. The king notes that Charlotte is now without a fiancé and that no suitable candidate exists within Rivera. Duke Maru listens intently, his face betraying nothing as the king pivots to political strategy. The king explains that Rivera's safety is owed to the neighboring kingdom of Shulton, which acts as a barrier against forest monsters. He reveals a crucial detail: the king of Shulton currently remains unmarried. Since only Shulton's people can fight the monsters, the king decides to strengthen the alliance through a royal engagement. The duke's hand clenches tight on his knee, the weight of the command pressing down on him. He closes his eyes in resignation, accepting the fate that has been decided for his daughter. With a heavy heart, he formally acknowledges and accepts the king's order. 1 month later, the duke informs Charlotte that she will teleport to Shulton but must first go to Rivera Castle. He looks at her with deep affection, telling her that she is truly a wonderful girl. He confesses that he loves her more than anything in the world and believes she deserves true happiness. Tears well up in his eyes as he asks her to forgive him for all the hardships she has endured until now. Charlotte gazes up at her father, touched by his vulnerability and open display of love. She smiles warmly, reassuring him that she was happy simply to live by his side. The duke chuckles through his tears, recalling how funny she looked when she tried to suppress her emotions like him. He gently tells her she didn't have to bottle up her feelings just because he was unable to express his own. He whispers her name, his voice thick with the emotion he suppressed for so long. In a final, heartfelt declaration, he tells her he loves her. Servants and the duke wave goodbye as Charlotte's carriage pulls away from the estate. Leaning out the window, Charlotte admits to herself that she would have stayed in Rivera forever if she could. She reflects on the land where she holds countless warm memories with her beloved parents. A single tear escapes her eye as she acknowledges that despite the pain, her attachment to her home remains. Arriving at the castle, she steels herself to move forward and do her best in her new life in Shulton. An attendant guides her toward the teleportation chamber, announcing he will accompany her. The massive doors open, revealing Charlotte standing poised and ready for her departure. She steps forward with dignity, declaring her readiness to travel to Shulton. Her expression is resolute, her eyes focused on the path ahead despite the uncertainty. She steps onto the magical circle, the light beginning to activate beneath her feet. Suddenly, Prince Theodore bursts into the room, screaming Charlotte's name in a rage. Charlotte turns in surprise, her eyes widening as she faces the furious prince one last time. Theodore blames her for getting him scolded by his father, while guards warn him to step back from the dangerous magic. He cruelly asks if she is jealous, vowing to live happily in Rivera while she suffers in the barren lands. The magic circle flares intensely, wind whipping around Charlotte as the teleportation begins. Observers shield their faces as the magical energy surges, signaling the transfer is imminent. The narrator explains that Charlotte was born with a unique ability where the weather changes according to her emotions. Calm amidst the swirling magic, Charlotte addresses the prince, admitting she once wished to be his wife. She declares she is leaving her love for him behind in Rivera and that it no longer matters. With a final grace, she wishes him happiness and a love that lasts as long as he lives. Theodore is left staring at the empty space where she stood, the magic fading into silence. The scene shifts to a new location as Charlotte arrives at her destination. A voice welcomes her to their land, addressing her formally as Lady Charlotte Maru. A handsome man introduces himself as Azul Schulten. He identifies himself as her fiancé, while narration reveals this king will fall deeply in love with her. The story foretells that thanks to her, the barren lands will one day transform into a fertile, blooming paradise. Charlotte remarks on the unexpected strength of the Schulten people upon her arrival. She formally introduces herself to King Azul Schulten, initiating their first meeting. Noticing a mark on his face, she asks if the stain on his cheek is a wound. Azul realizes she has spotted the mark and reacts with slight surprise. He explains it is merely the blood of a beast he hunted just a while ago. Charlotte observes the blood-stained soldiers, wondering if this harsh reality is everyday life in Schulten. She steels herself internally, resolving that she must adapt to this environment quickly. When she asks about a maid, Azul announces he will personally escort her to her room. He leads the way, his imposing figure guiding her through the castle corridors. Charlotte stares at his hand, noting how rough and large it is compared to Prince Theodore's. She observes that the atmosphere of this castle is completely different from the palace of Rivera. Looking outside, she questions the heavy clouds that make the daytime feel like night. Azul explains the castle is fortified with iron bars on the windows to keep monsters from getting in. Charlotte smiles and comments that such measures are befitting for the kingdom of Schulten. Azul falls silent at her remark, causing Charlotte to worry she said something inappropriate. She speculates that his stern demeanor is shaped by constantly living in such a harsh land. Arriving at a large chamber, Azul informs her that this will be the room shared between them. Charlotte feels nervous about the arrangement, hesitant to share a room with a man despite their engagement. A cheerful voice interrupts her thoughts as someone identifies her as Lady Charlotte. A woman introduces herself as Lori, declaring she will be in charge of Charlotte's personal affairs. Charlotte looks at the new arrival, realizing this must be the maid she asked about earlier. She politely greets the woman, saying it is a pleasure to meet her. Lori explains her dual role, stating she will serve as both Charlotte's personal maid and her guard. Charlotte notes the practical outfit is completely different from Rivera's maids, surprised by the combination of duties. Suddenly, Azul slams his scabbard onto the table with a sharp thud to command attention. He looks at her intensely, stating he wants her to understand the reality of this land once again. Charlotte repeats the word reality, unsure of what he implies. Azul describes Schulten as a barren land with an unstable climate where no plants or herbs grow. He explains that massive valleys and forests to the north are inhabited by monsters that he and the hunting corps fight. He bluntly tells her this is not a place for a delicate girl full of bright enthusiasm. He offers her a final chance to annul the engagement and return to her country right now. His expression is serious as he warns her that he doesn't want her to regret her decision later. Charlotte gazes at him, realizing internally that he is actually a very kind man. She admits she thought she could adapt to the climate with her ability but realizes she might have been naive. However, she asserts that despite the dangers, she can live freely here and express her true emotions. She clutches her chest, her resolve firming as she prepares to voice her decision. She declares from the bottom of her heart that she will never regret this choice. Reminding him of her agency, she states she came here because she herself wished to marry. She firmly tells him that she is not a masked woman. She lists her desires to cry freely when sad and get angry when treated unjustly. Her expression softens as she begins to speak about moments of happiness. She expresses her wish to laugh with all her heart and live a long, happy life together. Azul blushes, taken aback by her heartfelt confession and radiant smile. Suddenly, Charlotte points toward the window, urging King Azul to look. Azul and his aides stare in disbelief, muttering that what they are seeing cannot be real. Bright beams of sunlight pierce through the heavy clouds, illuminating the sky. The light spreads across the barren landscape, breaking the eternal gloom of the kingdom. Shafts of light touch the earth, a phenomenon rarely seen in this dark land. Azul looks up at the sky, his eyes wide with awe at the breaking weather. Charlotte calls his name softly, bringing his attention back to the present. He apologizes for his earlier behavior, explaining that such situations are extremely rare in his country. He bows his head, deeply apologizing for speaking rudely to her a moment ago. He confesses that having a woman like her come to marry into their kingdom feels like a dream. Covering his face, he admits he was nervous because he is not used to such formal occasions. Charlotte looks at him with a gentle expression, seeing his sincerity. She laughs softly, telling him it is fine and teasing him slightly about being nervous. Azul reaches out and gently takes her hand in his. He vows that if she accepts being his fiancée, he will treat her with sincerity and care for her with all his heart. A gentle smile graces his face as he looks at her with newfound affection. Charlotte smiles back, her face flushing with happiness. She thanks him, acknowledging that although they just met, she appreciates his words. She reflects on how wonderful it is to feel reassured and share genuine smiles. Meanwhile, back in Rivera, Theodore tells Verona that he loves her. Verona replies that she loves Lord Theodore too, happy he came to visit her today. Prince Theodore smiles warmly as he presents a surprise gift to the woman sitting before him. He opens a small box to reveal a dazzling necklace, eliciting a gasp of delight from Verona. She marvels at the beautiful jewelry, noting that he already gave her a lovely bouquet of flowers just a few days ago. Theodore gazes at her affectionately, assuring her that the necklace suits her very well. Blushing with happiness, Verona thanks Lord Theodore for his generosity. Internally, Theodore reflects that he fell completely in love with her from the very first time he saw that smile. He admires her cheerful and lively nature, contrasting her constantly changing expressions with the stiff woman he left behind. Determined to defy social norms, he vows to make Verona his lawful wife and become the next king. Meanwhile, gossip spreads among the servants as they whisper about that man going back to Verona again. One maid comments on how refined he looks, while another seems to share a knowing glance about the affair. A cynical servant sneers that the girl only shows her kindness to wealthy men. Far away in the kingdom of Shulton, the scene shifts to a stark landscape dominated by towering stone structures. Charlotte stares blankly at the cold stone walls of her new room, feeling the weight of her new reality. Her gaze fixes on the window, which is heavily fortified with thick iron bars. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she hugs her knees and admits she doesn't feel at ease at all. She compares the bleak view to Rivera, where her window overlooked a city and green mountains. She recalls the explanation that guards are constantly stationed in the watchtower to prepare for monster attacks. Looking at her attire, she remembers Lori explaining that trousers are standard for women here to allow movement during emergencies. Flopping back onto the bed, she sighs that customs truly differ so much from country to country. She closes her eyes, letting the realization sink in that she has finally come to Shulton. A wave of relief washes over her as she realizes that here, she can finally cry as much as she wants. Memories of Theodore resurface, reminding her of the pain she buried deep inside every time she failed to gain his love. She curls tightly into the sheets, her body trembling as the emotional dam finally breaks. Tears stream down her face as she acknowledges that she loved him, yet they could never connect. The sorrow is overwhelming, a testament to a love that existed but remained unrequited. She confesses to the empty room that she gave everything she had because Prince Theodore was her first love. Flashbacks reveal her attempts to reach him with tea and sweets, only to be coldly dismissed because he wasn't in the mood. She remembers writing countless letters to convey her feelings, only to be rejected with a curt excuse that he was busy. She sobs, realizing that despite thinking she was giving it her all, it meant nothing to him. The agony of her unreached wish crashes down on her, the unbearable sorrow finally finding a voice after years of silence. Her hiccups and sobs echo through the quiet stone room, a raw release of pent-up emotion. The vast emptiness of the chamber emphasizes her isolation as she lets go of her past. Outside the door, a figure stands silently, listening to the heart-wrenching sounds from within. Azul's voice breaks the solitude, gently asking through the door if Lady Charlotte is all right. A thought crosses Charlotte's mind, a quiet hope that her words might have finally reached King Azul. She sits on the bed, wiping tears from her eyes, determined not to add to the worries of those around her. Suddenly, the door clicks open, startling her as Azul enters and finds her in a vulnerable state. Azul looks concerned, asking if she was crying and gently inquiring about what happened. Charlotte quickly tries to wipe her tears away, embarrassed to be seen like this. Azul's expression softens with empathy as he observes her distress. He suggests they have something warm to drink first, trying to comfort her. As they sit with tea, he explains it's from a neighboring country and remarks on its soothing aroma. Azul watches her quietly, his gaze steady and reassuring. He asks if she regrets coming to Shulton, his tone serious but gentle. Charlotte confesses that she kept everything bottled up and endured her pain for so long. She reveals that in Rivera, she couldn't bring herself to say what she truly felt about her annulled engagement. Azul listens intently, his expression pained by her sorrow. She admits that once she arrived here, she just couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Fearing her story might upset him, she hesitates, mentioning it involves Prince Theodore. Azul smiles warmly, assuring her that it's all right. He encourages her to continue, expressing a genuine desire to know more about her. Charlotte explains that her former fiancé simply requested the annulment through a letter to her father. She recounts how she thought she was doing everything right, but her feelings never reached him because another woman was in his heart. With resolve, she declares that she has decided to leave all those feelings behind in Rivera. She explains that her tears aren't from longing, but from the realization that he simply didn't love her back. She vows not to remain weak or drown in her tears any longer. She apologizes, admitting she thought she had completely moved on and extinguished her feelings. Azul gently places a hand on hers, telling her she is kind-hearted and that's why she blames herself. He reassures her that he knows she wasn't at fault for what happened, revealing he looked into it himself. He firmly states that the only reason a man would turn away from such a gentle woman is because he wasn't worthy of her. Charlotte tears up again, feeling the weight of his words as she realizes her fault was simply not winning Theodore's love. Azul declares that from now on he will be the one to truly love her. Charlotte looks at him in surprise, her eyes wide with emotion. He adds with a serious tone that, of course, betrayal is absolutely forbidden. He expresses his gratitude to have such a sweet woman become his wife, promising to protect and cherish her forever. With a solemn vow, he swears his love and devotion to her in that moment. Her heart races in turmoil as she stares at him, overwhelmed by the sudden intensity of the moment and wondering what she should do. She had expected to build their bond slowly, but her heart has been pounding uncontrollably since they first met, drawing her into his sincere eyes. Azul gently breaks the spell, asking Lady Charlotte to look outside and notice that the rain has finally stopped. Standing by the window, he announces that tomorrow marks the beginning of the long-awaited rain festival. He explains that the festival is held in the city square near the palace once the rain ceases, a time when monsters vanish and stay away. Smiling warmly, he invites her to go with him, suggesting the people will believe she brought them good luck since the rain followed her arrival. Seeing his genuine happiness, she smiles back and accepts his invitation, saying she would be delighted to go with him. The city stretches out beneath the clearing sky, its buildings quiet and waiting for the festivities to come. She reflects on the strange calm settling over her heart, wondering if being with His Majesty is the reason for this newfound peace. A sudden memory flashes through her mind, and she calls out to her mother in the depths of her dream. In the flashback, a young Charlotte trips while running through the garden and cries out in surprise as she hits the ground. Rain begins to fall as she sits on the grass, sobbing that it hurts. Her mother appears instantly, kneeling to comfort her and gently urging her not to cry. With a soft laugh, her mother distracts her by pointing out a flower that carries the same scent as her perfume. She explains that it is a special fragrance known for bringing peace to the heart. Young Charlotte looks up with teary eyes, asking her mother why they are not allowed to cry or get angry. Her mother reveals the secret burden of their lineage. When they are sad or angry, the sky itself mimics their emotions. When Charlotte asks why this happens, her mother smiles wistfully and admits that even she does not know the reason. She warns Charlotte that she must never let anyone discover her powers because they are far stronger than her own. The warning turns grave as she explains that evil people would try to use those powers for their own ends. Frightened, Charlotte asks what will happen if they find out, and her mother insists she must be careful to remain unnoticed. Her mother's expression softens as she reassures her daughter not to worry. She promises that someday, someone special will appear who will protect Charlotte from the world. Confused, Charlotte asks if her father and mother won't be the ones to protect her, but her mother admits they cannot do it forever. She speaks of a future husband who will cherish and love Charlotte just as much as her parents do. Young Charlotte tilts her head, trying to grasp the concept of a future husband. Her mother assures her she will understand when she is older, though Charlotte admits she doesn't really get it yet. She advises Charlotte to be honest, face hardships hand in hand, and open her heart when that wonderful prince appears. Charlotte asks if that means he will be the one to protect her then. Her mother smiles playfully, reminding her that princesses these days do not just simply get protected. Young Charlotte beams with a bright smile, agreeing enthusiastically with her mother's wisdom. Back in the present, Charlotte sleeps soundly in her bed, her breathing soft and rhythmic as the memories fade. Charlotte wakes with a heavy heart, realizing she hasn't seen that dream of her mother in a very long time. The memory brings a pang of grief as she recalls how her mother passed away from illness shortly after that day. Her mind drifts to the prophecy of one who will love her most, wondering if His Majesty is the one she can finally trust with her secret. Lori bursts into the room with boundless energy, cheerfully asking if she may come in to start the day. Charlotte is surprised as the maid presents a fresh change of clothes for the upcoming festivities. Flustered, she listens as Lori teases her about her date with His Majesty to the Rain Festival. Lori giggles at her modesty before announcing that the king is already waiting for her in the grand hall. Azul greets her with a warm smile, asking gently if she managed to sleep well last night. A deep blush spreads across her cheeks as the sight of him makes her heart skip a beat. She stammers a polite reply while internally panicking over how fast her heart is racing just by seeing his face. Azul praises her appearance, telling her she looks beautiful no matter what but is especially lovely in that dress. He gazes at her with intensity, declaring that she looks truly stunning. Overwhelmed by the compliment, she shyly asks him to stop teasing her. A young man suddenly approaches, exclaiming that he has really wanted to meet Lady Charlotte. He beams with excitement, telling her she is just as lovely as the rumors claimed. Before she can react, he thanks her profusely for agreeing to become engaged to his brother. Azul introduces the energetic young man as his younger brother Daryl, who handles diplomatic affairs. Charlotte notes that they don't look much alike but politely expresses her pleasure at meeting him. Daryl turns serious for a moment, mentioning he knows everything she has been through. He remarks on her smile and advises that all she needs to do now is live happily beside his brother. Praising her as a goddess for bringing the rain, he predicts stronger ties with Rivera thanks to her arrival. He waves them off, telling them to come back safely as they head out to the festival. Azul takes the lead, inviting Lady Charlotte to follow him. She responds with a bright yes, ready to accompany him. Watching them leave, Daryl and the maid agree that moving the engagement forward was the perfect choice for Shulton's future. A powerful white horse steps into view, exuding strength and elegance. Charlotte gasps in awe, calling the creature a magnificent horse. Azul introduces his beloved steed Tail, a brave horse that charges through fields without fearing monsters. She marvels at the dignity of Shulton's horses, noting they are far different from the leisure horses she is used to. Azul extends a hand, inviting her to come closer. Panic sets in as she realizes he means for them to ride together on the same horse. Azul and Charlotte ride together across the plains, the wind sweeping past them as they head toward the city. Charlotte flushes red, her heart racing uncontrollably because His Majesty is sitting so incredibly close to her. Azul casually remarks that she is quite slender and suggests it might be better if she built a bit of muscle. She stares at him in disbelief, trying to imagine herself bulking up as he seemingly recommends. Recovering from the odd comment, she turns her gaze forward to take in the scenery passing by. Azul gestures to the surroundings, noting that this specific area is relatively rich in vegetation with plants and trees. He explains that beyond the residential walls, black clouds choke the sky and dry winds carry endless dust. His voice turns somber as he describes the territory outside as a truly barren land. Charlotte looks up at him, absorbing the weight of his words and the reality of his kingdom. Azul declares his love for the land of his birth, grateful that aid from other nations keeps them from starving. Watching his expression, Charlotte realizes just how deep his affection for this struggling land truly runs. With a bright smile, Azul shifts the mood and suggests they start by enjoying the rain festival today. Bunting and decorations string across the sky, signaling the start of the vibrant celebrations. The streets bustle with energy as townspeople fill the market, eager to celebrate the rare occasion. Music fills the air as people dance and raise wooden mugs, caught up in the joy of the moment. Charlotte marvels at the lively crowd, surprised to see such vitality in what was described as a barren land. A citizen approaches to thank Azul, celebrating the arrival of the long-awaited blessing rain yesterday. He explains that unlike in Rivera, people here rejoice at the rain because it drives away monsters and helps the harvest. Azul seizes the moment to introduce Charlotte, announcing her as his future wife who arrived just yesterday. The realization spreads through the crowd that she is the princess of Rivera who brought them good fortune. A roar of excitement erupts as the people cheer wildly for the arrival of their new princess. Azul encourages the celebration to continue while Charlotte basks in the warmth of their enthusiastic welcome. They immerse themselves in the festivities, tasting local treats and watching the street performances. A vendor cheerfully offers a drink to everyone, inviting the royal couple to try a cup. Although it is her first time, Charlotte decides to accept the offer to mark this special occasion. Azul agrees not to stop her but gently warns her not to push herself too hard. With a charming smile, he raises his cup to initiate the toast. Cups clash together high in the air as everyone shouts a joyous cheers. Charlotte takes a massive gulp, surprising herself with the boldness of the action. Her eyes widen in delight as she tastes the beverage and declares it absolutely delicious. She finds it sweet and easy to drink, happily sipping away as Azul starts to warn her about the alcohol content. Ignoring his concern, she laughs and keeps drinking, completely caught up in the delicious flavor and the festive mood. Charlotte gulps down the drink despite Azul's warning, surprised to find that alcohol tastes far better than she expected. She realizes that here she can finally let go of the emotional control she maintained for so long and show her true feelings. A giddy laughter bubbles up from within her as Azul watches her swaying figure with growing concern. She beams at His Majesty, declaring with uninhibited joy that she is so happy and finally feels completely free. For the first time, she understands the sheer liberation of laughing and crying straight from the heart. The crowd watches in confusion as her composure unravels, her flushed face revealing her intoxicated state. Laughter spills from her lips uncontrollably while a worried bystander urgently calls for water. She waves off the concern, insisting she is perfectly fine and truly happy as she sways on her feet. A sudden shift in the atmosphere draws everyone's eyes upward, distracting them from her drunken display. Azul gazes at the sky, his expression shifting from worry to awe as he notices the change above. The clouds part to reveal a brilliant light, casting a warm glow over the festival grounds. The townspeople gasp in amazement, marveling at the rare and beautiful sight of the clear blue sky. Charlotte reflects on how warmly this land and its king welcomed her, fueling her desire to do whatever she can for them. She raises her hands toward the heavens, acknowledging how much the people of this dry land cherish the rain. With a blissful smile, she calls out to the sky, commanding the rain to fall gently and softly upon them. Azul asks if she is drunk, but she ignores him, continuing her fervent prayer for the heavens to shower them with abundance. Convinced the alcohol has hit her too quickly, Azul turns to ask for water to help her recover. A sudden drop of water hits his cheek, stopping him cold as he realizes what is happening. He stares in disbelief as the impossible happens and rain begins to fall from the clear sky. Oblivious to the shock around her, Charlotte stands amidst the gentle shower with a serene and joyous expression. The sun shines through the falling rain, creating a magnificent rainbow that arches across the entire sky. The crowd erupts in wonder, pointing at the first rainbow many of them have ever seen in their lives. Cheers ring out declaring Lady Charlotte a true goddess who answered their prayers with a miracle. Azul stands frozen in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the magic that just unfolded before his eyes. Charlotte giggles and dismisses the praise, prompting Azul to wonder if she truly is a gift sent from the heavens. He gazes at her with intense emotion, declaring that to Schulten and to him, she is someone very special. The sincerity in his voice reaches her, cutting through her hazy state and touching her heart. She blushes deeply, stammering in surprise at being called special by the king. Seizing the joyous moment, Azul takes her hand and invites her to dance in celebration of the miraculous rain. The entire town joins in the festivities, dancing and laughing under the blessing of the gentle shower. Azul sweeps her off her feet, lifting her high into the air as they spin together in pure happiness. He smiles at her with genuine affection, holding his precious gift close as the festival continues around them. Charlotte wakes to a pounding headache, clutching her temples as a throbbing sensation overwhelms her senses. She feels as though her skull might explode just as Laurie cheerfully greets her with a morning salutation. Laurie offers a cup of herbal tea, explaining that she brought it specifically to ease the painful hangover. Charlotte winces at the bitter taste, realizing with a heavy sigh that this miserable feeling is indeed a hangover. Hearing a distant commotion, she learns from Laurie that His Majesty and the others are training in the courtyard. Curiosity piqued, Charlotte asks to see them, inviting Laurie to accompany her to the training grounds. Laurie shouts an energetic greeting as they approach the lively scene of the knights in action. She reveals that she used to swing a sword right alongside them before being appointed as Charlotte's personal maid. Laurie explains that she has taken a break from training now that she has settled into married life. Charlotte listens intently as they walk together toward the training area, absorbing this new information. Laurie casually drops the bombshell that her husband is actually Daryl, shocking Charlotte completely. Charlotte freezes in disbelief, realizing that if Laurie married Daryl, they are now technically family. Laurie calls out to snap her mistress out of her daze as they arrive at the training grounds. Azul notices her arrival and approaches, concernedly asking if she is all right after drinking so much last night. The surrounding knights stare in stunned silence, captivated by the sudden appearance of their king's betrothed. Azul scolds his men, barking that while he knows she is beautiful, they are in the middle of training. He smirks confidently, declaring that he intends to show off his best side to her as well. Turning back to his men, he challenges them to step up one by one for a sparring match. Charlotte beams with encouragement, cheering for him to do his best in the duel. Azul flashes a boyish grin, blushing slightly as he turns to thank her for the support. Watching him, Charlotte notes that the king sometimes laughs with the innocence of a child. Laurie confirms this observation, adding that he has been unusually cheerful every day lately. She explains that ever since the engagement, Azul has been determined to make Charlotte happy and give her peace. In a land constantly surrounded by danger, seeing His Majesty smile so openly is a rare and precious sight. Charlotte smiles softly, feeling truly happy to know she is the reason behind his newfound joy. Observing the practice, she realizes the Knights of Shulton are different, wielding their swords with a weight born of real risk. Their blades are heavy because they are inextricably tied to the brutal realities of life and death. Laurie explains they train relentlessly to protect the people from monsters that could appear at any moment. Charlotte watches the men laugh and bond, seeing the humanity and camaraderie beneath their warrior exteriors. A shadow crosses her gaze as a terrifying thought suddenly grips her heart, chilling her warm emotions. She begins to wonder what would happen if His Highness Azul were to suffer a serious injury in battle. Fear tightens her chest, causing her to clasp her hands together in silent prayer. The hypothetical dread lingers, forcing her to confront the grim possibility of his mortality. She is terrified by the thought that he might one day lose his life fighting for this land. Azul strolls through the castle grounds, a massive arsenal of weaponry casually slung over his shoulder. Noticing his fiancée's unease, the king halts to ask Lady Charlotte what is troubling her. Mistaking her fear for the weapons themselves, he apologizes, though Charlotte admits she feels a general sense of dread. To comfort her, Azul instantly discards his armaments, showing empty hands to prove he is harmless. Charlotte marvels at the sheer volume of steel he carries, prompting Azul to explain that unpredictability demands constant readiness. The realization hits her that in this kingdom, one can never truly lower their guard or relax. Voice trembling, she confesses that the weapons aren't the issue. Her true terror is the thought of His Majesty getting hurt. Dark visions flood her mind of monster attacks or him suffering injuries while trying to protect her. The nightmare scenario crystallizes as she asks what would happen if he went out to hunt and simply never returned. She clings to the fragility of their peaceful daily life, terrified of it shattering. The mere thought of suddenly losing his warm gaze and gentle voice paralyzes her with fear. Overwhelmed by the grim possibility, she feels as if she might break just thinking about it. Azul listens intently but swiftly dismisses her fears as entirely needless worries. Radiating confidence, he declares himself the King of Shulton, refusing to be defeated by any mere monster. He assures her that there is no way he would ever die and leave his beloved fiancée behind. Charlotte freezes, her eyes widening as his words sink in. Rejecting his logic, she cries out that he must not take wounds even for her sake. The two lock eyes in a moment of intense, silent understanding. Breaking the tension with a beaming smile, Azul promises to always return and never do anything to cause her worry again. The heavy conversation fades into the bright, open sky above the castle. The scene shifts to the intimacy of a shared private room where dinner is served. Azul devours his meal with gusto while Charlotte watches his appetite in astonishment. When she hesitates to eat, claiming a small appetite, Azul encourages her not to hold back. She laughs, joking that it seems as if the meat is disappearing by sheer magic due to his speed. Azul chuckles at the notion, noting that if eating fast were magic, most of his citizens would be wizards. Lori interrupts the banter to cheerfully point out that she actually eats more than the king does. Charlotte reels in shock as the maid adds that her husband eats even more than she does. The lively atmosphere contrasts sharply with Charlotte's memories of dining in silence with Prince Theodore. Savoring the moment, she realizes that while past meals were luxurious, they never tasted this delicious. Changing the subject, Azul points out a fashion design he believes would look lovely on her. He shows her a catalog sketch, and Charlotte asks if this specific style is his personal preference. Azul admits that while Shulton lacks luxury, his only wish is for her to wear whatever clothes make her happy. Charlotte reflects on her newfound freedom to choose her own clothes, recalling how she used to dress only to suit Prince Theodore's restrictive tastes. Her thoughts shift to practicality as she considers that simple attire is likely safer for emergencies in this dangerous land. Azul agrees that he isn't one for dressing up either, wistfully wishing Shulton were a safer country where fashion could be a priority. Despite the danger, he admits with sudden shy honesty that he would still like to see her wearing the beautiful designs. He stammers through an explanation about safety versus aesthetics, struggling to articulate his true feelings. Finally, he shouts out his true desire, confessing that he simply wants to see his fiancée looking cute. Realizing the loudness of his outburst, Azul freezes as embarrassment washes over him. He hastily tries to retract the statement, begging them to forget he said anything while Lori and Charlotte look on in surprise. Recovering his composure, he argues that seeing her beauty would provide a much-needed respite from the constant dangers of Shulton. Charlotte asks if it would truly make him happy, and upon hearing his confirmation, she instructs Lori to prepare the dress immediately. A few days later, the moment of revelation arrives as Charlotte steps out in her new, elaborate attire. Azul is struck speechless by her appearance, stammering that she looks absolutely stunning and truly gorgeous. Delighted, he declares that they will make a habit of having new clothes tailored for her every so often. Charlotte humbly tries to refuse, insisting that the bare minimum is enough for her needs. Lori interjects with a strategic angle, explaining that Charlotte's fashion will inspire the city's women and boost demand. The maid frames it as a positive prosperity cycle, claiming the future of Shulton's clothing industry depends on Charlotte. Convinced by the logic and Azul's delight, Charlotte accepts the role, understanding his desire to see her in delicate outfits. Lori then produces a mysterious package, promising it contains something that will make the king even happier. Charlotte pulls out a completely see-through garment, bewildered by its lack of substance and propriety. As Lori mischievously confirms that the transparency is the point, the door suddenly clicks open. Azul walks in to retrieve a forgotten coat, freezing instantly as he sees Charlotte holding the sheer lingerie against her body. Flustered, he stammers that such an outfit is strictly for the bedroom, his face erupting in a blush. Lori feigns innocence while Azul, trying to regain dignity, suggests she might wear it at night instead. He explains awkwardly that it is a nightgown meant for newlyweds to add a little excitement to their evenings. Charlotte, trying to grasp the mechanics of the garment, asks what one is supposed to wear underneath it. The answer is delivered with blunt finality: she is not supposed to wear anything underneath at all. Charlotte covers her face with her hands, utterly overwhelmed by the scandalous revelation. She reflects that despite all the dangers in Shulton, this sheer nightgown is the biggest shock she has faced so far. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Rivera, a serious conversation takes place in Verona's private room. A man formally asks Verona to marry him, presenting a solemn proposal. Verona gazes up with a flush on her cheeks, addressing the suitor as Lord Theodore. A bouquet of flowers is held tight, marking the beginning of a new engagement in the distant kingdom. Verona eagerly accepts the proposal without a moment's delay. A strange feeling washes over her as she wonders why this happiness feels like a sin. Ignoring the propriety that forbids unmarried couples from kissing, She does not hesitate in the slightest. Theodore is consumed by the desire to make her his before anything else. He gazes at her intensely, declaring that from now on she will be the mother of the kingdom. Verona stares back in stunned silence as the weight of his words hits her. She blinks in confusion, unable to process the strange title he just used. Realizing the title implies queenship, she reminds him that she is merely a wealthy merchant. Theodore finally drops the facade, revealing he is Prince Theodore Rivera and apologizing for the deception. The bouquet of flowers slips from Verona's hands and crashes to the floor. She struggles to reconcile the man before her with the prince, despite having noticed a resemblance earlier. Smiling gently, Theodore confirms he is indeed a prince and promises that she shall be a princess. Verona freezes, her expression going blank with shock. Sensing her distress, Theodore falters and offers a quiet apology. She confesses that she never imagined he was royalty, having believed him to be just a rich man. Trembling, she rejects the proposal, stating she cannot take on the responsibility of being mother of the kingdom. Theodore is bewildered, asking where the usual version of her has gone. Panicking, Verona lists her illiteracy and his engagement to a duke's daughter as reasons she is unfit. She firmly reiterates that under such circumstances, she does not want to rule the kingdom. Desperate to explain, she admits her only dream was to escape her miserable life by marrying a rich man. Theodore's expression turns cold as he asks if she loves him or just his money. Verona looks down, sweat beading on her face as she avoids his gaze. Her silence is broken only by a stammered apology that confirms his worst fears. A vein pops in Theodore's eye as pure rage begins to take over. He explodes in fury, kicking furniture aside and screaming at her. As she begs for forgiveness, he reveals he humiliated himself by breaking his engagement because he believed she loved him. He rages that he fought to elevate a worthless commoner like her to the highest station in the land. Trying to control the narrative, he insists she is just confused and orders her to clear her head. The room is destroyed in his tantrum as he smashes everything in sight. Outside the room, confusion spreads regarding the commotion and the sudden change in atmosphere. Theodore orders his guards to seize her immediately so they can return to the palace. He commands she be confined as a slave in the secondary palace for the crime of insulting him. Verona screams in terror as she is forcefully dragged away by the guards. Theodore stands alone in the wreckage, covering his face with his hand. He mutters to himself that they are inextricably bound by the thread of fate. A chilling, maniacal laugh escapes his lips as he descends into madness. With a twisted smile, he decides that he has spoiled her too much and she is now in need of discipline. Charlotte apologizes for the delay as she prepares to depart with the king. Azul smiles warmly beside his horse, signaling that it is time to leave. Having never left Rivera before, Charlotte is eager to see the world up close on this inspection tour. The massive castle gates loom ahead, guarded by soldiers standing at attention. Azul advises her to wear a cloth mask, warning that despite the rain, the dust can still be stifling. The heavy gates creak open, revealing the path to the outside world. Charlotte cries out in surprise as they ride into the open expanse. She adjusts to the sensation, her eyes widening behind the protective cloth mask. Gazing out, she takes in the stark reality of the landscape beyond the walls. A vast, barren wasteland stretches out before them, devoid of greenery. The wind howls through the dry air beneath a sky choked with black clouds. This desolation is the harsh influence of the nearby forest of beasts. Yet Charlotte realizes that despite the unforgiving land, the people remain strong and full of life. Azul gazes at the horizon, declaring his resolve to protect both the people and this harsh land. Feeling ashamed of her own naivete, Charlotte reflects on her initial reasons for coming here as a bride. Determined to be useful, she vows to learn everything she can about Shulton. She points toward a distant valley, asking if that is where the monsters originate. Boldly, she asks Azul to take her there, reasoning that the recent rain will keep the beasts away. Azul hesitates, weighing the risk against her logic. He agrees to the detour but warns her not to stray, as the ground is treacherous. They arrive at a rocky enclosure where the wind dies down and the dust settles. Azul helps her down, cautioning her to watch her step on the uneven terrain. Charlotte is awestruck by the sheer scale of the valley, which seems to stretch on forever. She speculates that such a massive geological formation might be rich in mineable minerals. Her mind turns to the possibility of refining these resources into beautiful jewelry. Azul points out a fissure connecting to the forest of beasts, explaining that the monster threat makes mining impossible. He admits the dangerous valley has a certain charm, especially to a young man's adventurous spirit. He confesses that he once snuck out here alone as a child, causing a massive panic. Charlotte sympathizes with the worried adults, and Azul ruefully remembers the punch his father gave him. She giggles at the image of the king as a spirited, troublemaking boy. Azul watches her laugh, his expression softening with genuine affection. He invites her to see a special place nearby, and she eagerly accepts the offer. Charlotte marvels at the cave's entrance, asking if it is a limestone cave, and Azul confirms it is the only one safe enough to enter. The king raises a glowing lantern to light the way, casting shadows against the cavern walls. With a warm smile, Azul beckons for Charlotte to follow him into the depths. They step into the cavern, surrounded by jagged rock formations hanging from the ceiling. The air turns cold and heavy with the scent of damp stone, filled with the echoing sound of dripping water. Laughing at her anticipation, Azul promises she will see the secret inside soon enough. He gestures forward, urging Miss Charlotte to look at the spectacle before them. A breathtaking cavern reveals itself, filled with massive crystalline formations that shimmer in the dim light. Stalactites drip into a dark pool below, creating a serene yet eerie atmosphere. Charlotte gasps in wonder as the water reflects the light, making the rocks glow in a dreamy, otherworldly way. Breaking the spell, Azul warns her that despite its beauty, the water is poisonous and cannot be drunk. He wistfully wishes he could show her a lush paradise fitting for her gentleness, but Charlotte insists she didn't come seeking beautiful scenery. Her voice firm, she declares that her only desire was to learn more about the reality of Shulton. Azul gazes at her in silence, moved by the sincerity in her eyes. Having only known the world through books, she expresses her joy at finally experiencing the land he cherishes so deeply. With a tender smile, she confesses that she is truly grateful to have become his fiancée. A flush rises on Azul's cheeks as her heartfelt words sink in. Recovering his composure, he softly admits that it is an honor to hear such sentiments from her. He reflects on the past, admitting he never imagined back then that he would one day be engaged to a beautiful princess like her. Charlotte pauses, confused by his specific phrasing of back then. Azul covers his mouth with his gloved hand, looking away as he prepares to reveal a secret. He reveals that he once saw her at a ball in the kingdom of Rivera, though she likely wouldn't remember. Charlotte apologizes for not recalling the encounter, and Azul explains he had to leave quickly due to work. He insists that although it was only a brief moment, it left a lasting impact. Recalling the vision of her in a grand dress, he tells her she was truly beautiful at that ball. From that day forward, her image was burned into his memory, never to be forgotten. Tears well up in Charlotte's eyes as she realizes he has harbored these feelings for her all this time. Azul smiles softly, his affection clear in his warm gaze. Deciding to end the tour for the day, Azul suggests they return to the palace before the sun sets. As he gently takes her hand, Charlotte recalls her initial surprise when the marriage proposal first arrived. Azul admits he questioned whether it was right to bring a gentle woman like her to such a barren, harsh land. He reveals the single condition Duke Maru included in the marriage letter: never make her unhappy. The ethereal glow of the cavern illuminates the pair as they continue their walk together. Azul silently renews his solemn vow to ensure her happiness, no matter the personal cost. Sensing his sudden quietness, Charlotte asks if something is wrong, but he quickly dismisses her concern. Later in the castle library, Azul laments that previous attempts to cultivate plants in Shulton have failed. He explains that despite his hopes for edible crops, the soil has only ever yielded poisonous or thorny weeds. With the rain returning, he wonders if it is worth trying again, though he fears the irregular climate may doom the effort. Charlotte suggests targeting vegetables that require little water to boost the kingdom's self-sufficiency and create jobs. Her eyes light up as she spots a familiar illustration on the page of an open book. She identifies the plant as Tirolto, noting that it is a hardy crop known for being relatively easy to grow. Recalling memories of planting it with her father, she explains that it thrives as long as it receives water and sunlight. Hope rises as she reasons that if they succeed in cultivating it here, the people of Shulton will be overjoyed. She studies the page intently, convinced that even in this harsh climate, a small harvest might be possible. A sudden, sharp sound shatters the peaceful atmosphere, startling everyone in the room. Lori identifies the ominous tolling as the alarm bell that signals the appearance of monsters. The reality of the threat sinks in as Charlotte processes that the kingdom is under attack. Azul declares that as king, he must answer the call of the bell immediately and head to the front lines. Pausing to comfort her, he vows to return safely, reminding her of the promise he made. Trembling, Charlotte watches him go, begging him to please be careful. Azul strides away without looking back, his silhouette disappearing into the urgency of duty. Left behind, Charlotte resolves to understand the situation and asks Lori to explain the meaning of the bells. Lori explains that the alarm system is divided into 5 distinct levels of emergency based on the threat. 1 ring means a squad is dispatched, 2 or 3 call for reinforcements, while 4 and 5 signal evacuation and survival priorities. She adds that whenever the bell rings, His Majesty heads into battle and does not return until every monster is slain. Charlotte is struck by the severity of his burden, her face paling at the thought of his constant danger. Lori quickly reassures her that it is usually just 1 ring and the situation has never escalated to 3 or more. Clenching her fists, Charlotte wonders what she can possibly do to support the king and protect his country. A somber atmosphere settles over the room as Lori mentions the power of prayer in these dark times. She explains that when helpless to fight, the people of Shulton offer their prayers to the heavens. Believing in the gods of sky and nature, they give thanks for life and pray fervently for the safe return of their defenders. Charlotte learns that even King Azul often visits the church to offer his own prayers. Standing side by side, the 2 women clasp their hands together in solemn supplication. Fingers intertwine tightly as they channel their hopes into a silent plea for safety. Charlotte closes her eyes, asking the heavens to please let everyone return home safely. Charlotte stands by the window, her heart heavy as she questions why the king and his companions must venture into such dangerous places. Lori approaches her mistress, watching silently as the noblewoman gazes out at the world with a melancholic expression. Breaking the silence, the maid asks if Charlotte truly understands the reason why His Majesty bravely heads to the battlefield. She explains that defeat would mean monsters invading the city, so the knights fight to ensure they can return to the ones they love. A gentle smile graces Lori's face as she reflects on the courage required to protect their home. She reveals that her own parents were knights who lost their lives in battle, yet her memories of them remain vivid to this day. It wasn't until she became a knight herself that she truly understood the depth of their resolve. She realizes they faced her with total sincerity every single day because they knew death could claim them at any moment. Lori describes the paradox of accepting death while simultaneously believing completely that one will return alive. She pauses, her expression softening as she prepares to draw a parallel to the present. The maid notes that the loving way her parents looked at her is exactly how His Majesty looks at Lady Charlotte. Charlotte blushes furiously, her eyes widening as the weight of the king's deep affection truly sinks in. Flustered by her own boldness, Lori stammers and tries to clarify her statement to avoid embarrassment. Regaining her composure, she reassures Charlotte that the king will definitely return to her, urging her not to worry. Lori admits her true concern is actually for Charlotte's well-being, as she hates seeing her mistress burdened by excessive anxiety. A sense of calm washes over Charlotte as she takes in the comforting words, her expression softening into a grateful smile. Realizing she once took peace for granted, Charlotte resolves to believe in His Majesty and wait for his safe return. Lori affirms that their peace is built on the sacrifices of the front lines and suggests they continue their search in the library. The weight of that sacrifice lingers in the air as a reminder that they must never forget the cost of their safety. Charlotte closes her eyes and clasps her hands, offering a silent, fervent plea to the heavens above. Gazing out the window at the gray sky, she whispers a desperate wish for rain to fall upon the land. The vast, rugged landscape stretches out beneath the clouds, awaiting the answer to her prayer. On the battlefield, the knights engage in a chaotic skirmish with a swarm of flying monsters. Sudden rain begins to pour, causing the monsters to shriek and retreat as the soldiers realize the weather has saved them. The creatures scream in agony as they flee the downpour, leaving the relieved soldiers to cheer for their survival. One of the knights remarks that the heavens have been unusually generous with rain lately, turning the tide of battle. Azul stands amidst the dissipating battle, a look of quiet realization crossing his face as he looks skyward. Standing tall in his battle-worn armor, the king notices a disturbance in the distance despite the victory. Rustling in the nearby brush draws the attention of the weary warriors as a new threat emerges. A massive beast suddenly lunges from the shadows, prompting a soldier to scream a warning to His Majesty. In a flash of steel, Azul intercepts the surprise attack with his blade, sparks flying as he holds his ground. With a powerful roar, the king drives his sword through the beast, cleaving it in a single, decisive strike. A winged beast screeches as it abandons the fight, fleeing into the sky above the treetops. The confused knights watch the retreat, wondering aloud if the monsters have truly fled the battlefield. Their attention is drawn away from the retreating enemy by a mysterious, radiant light appearing nearby. A soldier checks on the king, who demands the sword so he can inspect the anomaly himself. He reaches out, his hand hovering just before the strange, invisible boundary. His fingers brush against the light, testing the energy that pulses within it. He wonders internally if this strange barrier reacts solely to the presence of monsters. A wave of warmth washes over him, accompanied by a comforting scent that feels strangely familiar. His eye widens as the sensation triggers a sudden, vivid recognition. A vision of a smiling Charlotte manifests in his mind, prompting him to whisper her name. He immediately dismisses the thought, telling himself that such a thing is impossible. A soldier shouts urgently for His Majesty, alerting him to a sudden emergency. The knight points frantically to something hidden behind a nearby rock wall. Stammering in shock, the soldier struggles to comprehend what he is seeing. The battle-worn knights stand frozen, surrounded by a field of blooming flowers in the middle of the snowy wasteland. Petals drift through the air as they ask what on earth could have caused this miracle. Back at the castle, Charlotte gazes out the window, noting how late the hour has become. The silence of the room is broken by a sharp knock at the door. Laurie enters with a bright smile to announce that His Majesty has finally returned. Charlotte's face lights up with a radiant smile of pure relief. She sprints down the hallway, her footsteps echoing as she rushes to meet him. Beaming with joy, she welcomes His Majesty back and thanks goodness for his safety. The king looks down at her with a gentle smile, announcing his return. He immediately notices how cold her body is and orders Laurie to bring warm tea. Charlotte apologizes for her anxiety, while the king gently urges her to rest instead of worrying about them. He explains that they would have been later, but they were lucky that the monsters withdrew early. Charlotte stares up at him, her eyes wide as she processes this information. He reveals that fortunately, it began to rain, which caused the enemy to retreat. Charlotte is struck by the realization that her desperate prayer might have actually reached the heavens. Laurie announces that the bath and tea are ready, urging everyone to warm up and rest. Charlotte wonders if she can control the weather not just with her emotions, but also through her prayers. She reflects on the power she holds, realizing the profound connection between her heart and the world. The chapter opens with a quiet pause, setting the stage for Charlotte's deepest internal conflict regarding her secret. Charlotte wonders if their connection is strong enough to withstand the truth, even if their hearts are truly connected. She is consumed by the fear of what His Majesty would think if he discovered that her emotions can change the weather. Terrifying thoughts race through her mind, imagining him seeing her as a frightening witch or merely a tool to be used. She stares at the patterns on the wall, haunted by the dread that her engagement might be annulled once again. A voice interrupts her spiraling thoughts, asking if she is awake and assuring her she can rest. Charlotte sits up in bed, admitting she cannot sleep, which prompts the king to ask if something is bothering her. He stands by the window, gently encouraging her to tell him anything immediately, no matter how small it might be. A close-up reveals the conflict in her eye as she struggles between the desire to speak and the fear of the consequences. She desperately wants to tell him the truth but is paralyzed by the terrifying possibility that he might reject her. Her mind conjures a painful image of him looking at her with a cold, unfeeling gaze. Despite her fears, she tries to remind herself that His Majesty is different from those who hurt her before. A sob escapes her lips as the emotional pressure finally becomes too much to bear. Tears stream down her face as she tries to cover her mouth and suppress her crying. Panic rises in the king's voice as he asks what is wrong, fearing he might have said something to upset her. His expression is one of pure concern, confused by her sudden tears and desperate to comfort her. With a gentle command, he asks Miss Charlotte to come closer to him. He pulls her into a warm embrace, holding her securely as she weeps against his chest. Softly, he tells her to let it all out, assuring her that she never needs to hold back her feelings with him. Charlotte reflects on his consistent kindness, realizing he always checks on her well-being with genuine care. Through her tear-filled eyes, she sees the truth of his character clearly, noting how open and cheerful he actually is. She admits to herself that she wants to bare her soul to him, yet the fear remains a heavy weight. The intimacy of the moment leaves her breathless as she looks up at him. He smiles reassuringly, noting that some things are hard to say, accepting the complexity of her feelings. Cupping her cheek, he promises to do anything for her and urges her never to suppress who she is. She contrasts her anxiety-filled past with Prince Theodore to the warmth she feels now, as the king suggests they finally rest. He holds her gently, his silent presence offering more comfort than words ever could. Charlotte lies in bed, her tears drying as the warmth of his words settles deep in her heart. She realizes her mother's prophecy was true. She has found the one who cherishes her more than anyone else in the world. Morning light filters into the room as she awakes, feeling a new sense of peace. Sitting up, she gazes out the window and marvels at the beauty of the clear blue sky. She opens the balcony doors, stepping out to meet the day with a lighter heart. The wind blows through her hair, feeling warm and comforting instead of reflecting her usual turmoil. She acknowledges that living in Shulton with His Majesty has finally given her the freedom to live without worry. With a resolved smile, she makes a silent vow to her mother that she will tell His Majesty everything. Charlotte steels her resolve, deciding the time has finally come to reveal the truth of her ability to His Majesty Azul. Her expression shifts from uncertainty to determination as she gazes forward, ready to face the consequences. She wonders if the strength pushing her forward is the lingering spirit of her mother guiding her steps. Reflecting on her past, she realizes she never found peace with Prince Theodore because she lived in constant anxiety, unable to share her burden. Laurie greets her with a cheerful smile, announcing he was just on his way to summon her for the morning. He excitedly points to the window, marveling that he just took a sunbath under the rare, beautiful blue sky of Shulton. Laurie praises her as a goddess, convinced that the climate has miraculously started to change ever since she arrived. He expresses his deep, genuine gratitude that Lady Charlotte came to their land. With a warm invitation, he guides her to join them for breakfast. Charlotte nervously clutches the fabric of her dress, her hands trembling slightly as she prepares to speak. She gathers her courage and asks His Grace if she might have a moment of his time privately after the meal. The scene shifts to the open castle grounds, bathed in the bright light of the unclouded sun. Standing side by side, they admire the view, agreeing that the blue sky brings a wonderful, uplifting feeling. Internally, panic rises in Charlotte as she struggles to find the words to begin the conversation she dreads. The king suddenly breaks the silence, asking if she would stay in Shulton even if the land were no longer barren. Caught completely off guard by the unexpected question, Charlotte can only blink in confusion. He explains that the Duke originally wanted her to marry into Shulton precisely because the land was desolate and in need. He gazes out at the horizon, suggesting the possibility that their country may not remain barren in the future. Charlotte presses him to explain the meaning behind his cryptic words. The king turns to face her, his expression serious yet gentle as the sunlight frames his features. He reveals that beautiful flowers have unexpectedly started blooming in the valley, a sign of life returning. Charlotte wonders if her ability is the cause, while the king muses on the undeniable changes occurring in the land and weather. He solemnly declares his decision to love and cherish her more than anyone else, regardless of the land state. Blushing, he admits that while she is his fiancée, his heart was truly stolen the moment he first saw her. He asks with vulnerability if she will stay by his side forever, even if the land heals and the reason for their union changes. Charlotte is overwhelmed with emotion, her eyes widening as the weight of his heartfelt confession sinks in. Tears welling up, she fervently promises to stay forever if he will have her, affirming her desire to remain. The king calls her name softly, sensing there is still something weighing on her mind. Charlotte interrupts to ask him to make his final decision only after hearing what she must say about the land's future. Steeling herself, she looks him in the eyes and confesses that she is harboring a significant secret. She asks him to watch closely as she prepares to demonstrate the truth of her existence. Charlotte clasps her hands in prayer and commands the gentle rain to fall upon them, revealing her power to the sky. The king sits alone on the balcony ledge, the silence around him broken only by a soft sound in the air. He turns his head sharply, his attention caught by an unseen shift in the atmosphere. Charlotte reveals the nature of her power, explaining that the sky rains when she cries and shines when she smiles. She continues her confession, stating clearly that the heavens themselves respond to her emotions. The king stares at her in bewilderment, asking what she is suddenly saying to him. His expression tightens into one of intense focus as he processes this incredible revelation. Connecting the dots, he admits he had already wondered why Schulten's climate changed after her arrival. He deduces that the rainbow at the Rain Festival must have also been a direct result of her ability. Deep in thought, the king touches his chin as he silently contemplates the implications of her secret. Suddenly, he sweeps Charlotte up into his arms and carries her inside to talk more calmly. They settle onto a sofa in a private room, the air thick with the weight of the conversation. He gently asks if she is willing to answer a few questions regarding her power. Worried for her safety, he asks if the ability drains her life force or carries a terrible price. Charlotte denies this immediately, assuring him she has never heard of such consequences. She explains that while her mother died of illness, her great-grandmother lived a long, healthy life. She clarifies that only her father knows the full truth and asks who else is aware of her secret. Azul realizes the king of Rivera knew, leading Prince Theodore to propose solely to use her power. He concludes grimly that the prince's proposal was a strategic move to exploit her ability. Azul then asks why she chose to reveal this dangerous secret to him now. Charlotte quotes her mother, who told her to tell the truth only to someone she truly loves and trusts. She confesses that she never thought she would find someone who makes her feel this safe. Hesitating slightly, she admits that her feelings are still taking shape. With a flush on her cheeks, she bravely tells King Azul that she thinks she is in love with him. She squeezes her eyes shut, her heart pounding as she waits for his response. Opening one eye, she peeks nervously at him to gauge his reaction. Azul covers his mouth with his hand, blushing deeply as the impact of her words hits him. Charlotte calls out to him in concern, prompting a flustered apology from the king. He admits he never imagined hearing such words from the very first person he has ever loved. Shocked, Charlotte asks if she is really his first love, having assumed he had experience. He explains that his father died when he was 15, forcing him to spend his life fighting monsters instead of dating. Blushing furiously, he confirms she is his first love and laments how embarrassing it is to admit. Trying to regain his composure, he suggests they return to the main topic. Azul gravely warns Charlotte to keep her ability a strict secret, for there are those who would try to exploit it if they knew. The heavy anxiety Charlotte felt just moments ago vanishes completely, replaced by a sense of peace as she agrees. She reflects with relief that she found the courage to entrust his grace with the dangerous truth. The scene shifts to the sub-palace in the Kingdom of Rivera, casting a shadow over the sunny day. Verona sits trembling in a corner, biting her thumb in visible distress as she waits. Prince Theodore enters with a chillingly pleasant smile, asking his dearest Verona how she finds her new life here. He reminds her that she no longer needs to be the mother of the kingdom, since he bought her, ensuring she never has to worry about her livelihood. Theodore lists the luxuries of fine food and clothes she now possesses, questioning why she is unsatisfied with the life of a kept woman. Verona screams in protest, rejecting this gilded cage that is far from the life she actually wished for. She stammers a denial, refusing to accept his twisted definition of her happiness. Theodore commands her silence, coldly stating she is his possession and possessions do not talk back to their owners. Terrified, Verona begs for forgiveness, desperate to appease him by declaring her love for Lord Theodore. He stares down at her with cold, dead eyes as she clings to him, unmoved by her pleas. Without a shred of mercy, he violently kicks her away, sending her crashing to the floor. Looking down at her with disdain, he spits out that he has had enough of her lies. A knock at the door interrupts his abuse, drawing his attention away from the sobbing girl. A servant enters to announce that His Majesty requests Prince Theodore's immediate presence. Theodore freezes, muttering, "Father?" in confusion as he processes the summons. He wonders if his father already knows about Verona's capture and the ensuing mess he has created. Nervously, he stands before the heavy doors and asks permission to enter his father's chamber. The door opens, revealing the king waiting within. Theodore decides to feign regret, promising to abandon his feelings and walk the path of a true royal. The king cuts him off coldly, announcing he has arranged for Theodore to become the sixth husband of the Empress of Rodovia. Theodore's confident facade cracks as he stares blankly, unable to process the sudden decree. He protests that he is the future king and claims this must be a joke, but his father retorts that Theodore is the only joke here. Shock leaves the prince speechless as the reality of his father's words sinks in. The king scolds him for driving away a noble girl for a commoner and throwing tantrums like a child, piling disgrace upon disgrace. He commands Theodore to prepare for the marriage immediately, declaring he has no intention of ever letting him take the throne. The king walks away, ignoring Theodore's desperate pleas for him to wait. Left alone, Theodore clutches his cravat, trembling as his future collapses around him. He recalls the rumors of the empress leaving displeased husbands to rot in loneliness and misery in her subpalace. A terrified realization dawns in his eyes as he envisions his own doom. He spirals, obsessing over the fact that Charlotte didn't love him and Verona rejected his distorted version of marriage. A twisted realization forms in his mind as he decides on the only solution to fix his broken reality. With a delusional resolve, he vows to force Charlotte to come back to him. Back in the room, Verona cowers on the floor, still recovering from his assault. Theodore bursts back in, his expression unhinged and manic. He stalks toward her, ignoring her fear as he prepares to execute his new plan. He throws a dress at her head, barking a sharp order for her to change her clothes immediately. He announces they are going to Charlotte, leaving Verona confused and terrified by his sudden shift. He explains they will apologize together and beg Charlotte to return to the kingdom of Rivera. His voice drops to a dark whisper as he adds that if she refuses, they will all die together. He smiles insanely, assuring her that everything will be fine as long as they are together, while Verona trembles in horror. He grabs her face, forcing her to look at him with a possessive grip. His eyes are empty of sanity as he stares into her terrified gaze. With a chilling tenderness, he tells her to be a good girl. The scene opens in the peaceful inner courtyard of Schulten Castle, where new life is beginning to take root. Charlotte marvels at how much the Tirolto plants have grown, noting that they are one of the easiest edible plants to cultivate. She reflects that she asked His Majesty to let her start this small garden because the recent weather has been so favorable. With a hopeful smile, she wishes for Schulten to become a land filled with more and more smiles in the future. King Azul approaches with a bright smile, claiming it is his break time when Charlotte asks if he shouldn't be working. He gently points out a smudge of dirt on her cheek, his expression tender and amused. Charlotte blushes as he wipes it away, stammering a shy thank you for his attentiveness. She excitedly shows him the blooms, admitting she never thought plants could grow this beautifully in the barren land of Schulten. Noticing her hard work, the king suggests they take a break and rest over in the gazebo for a while. The quiet structure stands beneath a soft sky, offering a moment of tranquility away from the castle duties. Azul reveals he has news, pulling out a letter he just received from her father. He hands the envelope to her, watching her reaction closely as she prepares to read the contents. Charlotte's eyes widen in shock as she scans the words, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. Sensing her distress, the king immediately asks what is the matter. She explains that Prince Theodore was abandoned by his lover and has now decided to marry someone from the neighboring Rodovia Empire. Azul is stunned into silence, a look of pure bewilderment crossing his face at the absurdity of the news. Recovering from the shock, he expresses a grim hope that Prince Theodore will not do anything reckless in response. His gaze hardens with resolve as he declares that no matter what happens, he will never give Charlotte up to anyone. Charlotte stares up at him, her cheeks flushing pink as the intensity of his possessiveness sinks in. He firmly states that even if she said she didn't want to stay, he would refuse to send her back to Rivera. Touching her chest, Charlotte thinks to herself that hearing him say such things actually makes her happy. A comedic misunderstanding ensues as he asks if she is happy about his feelings, causing her to stammer a denial. She looks down, her face heating up as she struggles to clarify her chaotic emotions without rejecting him. The king watches her with a soft, patient gaze, waiting for her to find the right words. He asks quietly if she dislikes it when he holds her in his arms. Panic flares in her eyes as she quickly assures him that she does not dislike it at all. Lowering her voice, she shyly admits that, on the contrary, it makes her happy. Relieved, he leans down and gently rests his forehead against hers, closing the distance between them. Held tight against his chest, she hears his heartbeat and fears her own is pounding so loudly he might hear it too. She closes her eyes, surrendering to the warmth and safety of his embrace. Azul tightens his hold, whispering that he won't allow himself to lose her again, even if it becomes too late for regrets. With deep emotion, he finally speaks the words aloud, telling Lady Charlotte that he loves her. Charlotte stands frozen, her cheeks flushing as the weight of her confession hangs in the air between them. A sudden shift in the atmosphere breaks the moment as invisible energy begins to swirl around them. Rain begins to fall gently from the sky, responding to the emotional release of her heart. Just as quickly as it began, the clouds part, and sunlight streams down to touch the barren earth. Miraculously, green shoots burst from the ground, growing at an impossible speed into vibrant lilies. Azul and Charlotte stand in awe within the gazebo, surrounded by a sudden, magical garden brought to life by her power. Charlotte gasps at the breathtaking sight, overwhelmed by the beauty she has unwittingly created. Azul reaches out to catch a falling droplet, his expression shifting from wonder to sudden realization. He stares at his hand, the sensation of the rain triggering a deep, dormant memory within him. A specific scent fills the air, connecting the present moment to a fragment of the past he had long forgotten. He whispers in disbelief, wondering if the legendary time has finally returned to Shulton. Charlotte points out a white flower, noting that it looks exactly like the one her mother once gave her. She reaches out to gently touch the delicate petals of the mysterious bloom. The fragrance intensifies, confirming Azul's suspicion and shaking him to his core. He stares at her in shock, muttering that it cannot possibly be her who holds this ancient power. Urgency overtaking him, he asks Charlotte to come with him immediately. They arrive at the Shulton Castle Library, where secrets of the past are kept hidden. Azul scans the shelves frantically before pulling a specific volume from the collection. A hidden mechanism activates, revealing a secret passage behind the bookshelf that leads deeper into the castle. He guides her into the darkness, leading her toward the truth of her lineage. They enter the royal family's historical archive, a secret room filled with forbidden knowledge. He opens an ancient book, pointing to a passage describing the founding period of the Kingdom of Shulton. Azul admits he had forgotten the contents until seeing her power reminded him of the old legends. Charlotte looks down at the text, her eyes scanning the ancient script with growing trepidation. The book describes a maiden whose prayers bring rain and cause sacred white flowers to bloom, releasing a pure fragrance. It reveals that long ago, a maiden in Shulton possessed the divine power to control the weather. A conflict arose with a friendly neighboring kingdom, leading to the tragic death of a Shulton royal. Following the tragedy, a great calamity struck that changed the geography and summoned monsters, decimating the population. To save Shulton, the neighboring king demanded the Weather Maiden as his wife in exchange for aid. After her departure, Shulton's weather became unstable and the once fertile lands turned barren. The neighbor continued to support Shulton solely because it served as a buffer against the monsters. Azul reveals the shocking truth that this neighboring nation is none other than the Kingdom of Rivera. Azul reports that a white flower recently bloomed near the monster forest, emitting a rainbow radiance that repels the beasts. He notes that ancient texts describe a white flower with the power to keep monsters at bay, matching the current events perfectly. Struck by the coincidence, Azul suggests that perhaps Lady Charlotte is a direct descendant of that legendary ancient maiden. Charlotte stands in the royal library, wondering aloud if she could truly possess such a significant and mystical power. Azul muses that whether it is coincidence or fate, the timing of these events is undeniably strange. He smiles gently, proclaiming that she might truly be a goddess of fortune for their kingdom. Charlotte looks up with hope, her eyes reflecting a desire for his words to be true. She wonders if the gods guided her to this land to show her that this is her rightful place. Shifting to strategy, Azul warns that if her power repels monsters, other nations might withdraw their financial protection. He concludes that Shulton must increase local production to stand on its own before that support is cut off. Charlotte steps forward with determination, asking to discuss a specific proposal with His Majesty. The scene shifts to the bustling town square, where snowflakes drift down upon the rooftops. Carrying a box of seedlings, Azul confirms that everyone is waiting as Charlotte prepares to address the crowd. Her plan involves granting free land to citizens in need, provided they share a portion of their harvest's profit with the kingdom. They arrive at the public square, stepping onto a wooden platform to face the gathered townsfolk. Nervous but resolved, Charlotte thanks the crowd for gathering and announces an important proposal regarding the Tirolto plant. The citizens murmur in confusion, surprised by the sudden agricultural initiative. She acknowledges the land's history of barrenness but reveals that recent climate changes have made cultivation possible, showing a plant she grew herself. Charlotte offers prepared seedlings to the crowd, explaining that Tirolto is easy to grow with just sunlight and water. The townspeople exchange skeptical glances, doubt written clearly on their faces as they listen. Whispers ripple through the crowd as they question if anything can really grow in their barren soil. A man voices their collective hesitation, asking incredulously if farming is possible in such poor earth. Doubts persist as someone suggests the healthy seedlings were likely just brought in from somewhere else. Undeterred, Charlotte passionately declares her wish to transform Shulton into a fertile, prosperous kingdom that can stand on its own. She bows her head deeply, humbly begging the citizens to lend her their aid in this endeavor. With tears in her eyes, she reiterates her personal desire to try planting alongside them. A young boy looks up at her, moved by her sincerity and the hope in her voice. His face lights up as he raises his hand, shouting enthusiastically that he wants to try growing one. Inspired by the child, the mood shifts instantly as others clamor for seedlings, eager to join the effort. Time passes, and the scene transitions to a view of the town a few days later. The young boy runs up to Charlotte, proudly showing off his pot where the plant has grown significantly. He points out with excitement that buds are already starting to sprout from the stem. Other children join in, eagerly displaying their own plants that have successfully grown new shoots. Azul marvels at the greenery spreading through the city, while Charlotte smiles, eager to see the flowers bloom. Noticing her bright expression, Azul comments on how happy she seems. He suddenly recalls the ball in Rivera, admitting he still vividly remembers how stunning she looked that night. He confesses that part of him wishes to see her dressed elegantly again, rather than in her current simple attire. Charlotte blinks in surprise, caught off guard by his sudden nostalgic comment. He expresses a desire to see her wearing a lovely gown and dancing gracefully with him. Charlotte stares at him, her cheeks dusting with pink as she processes his romantic request. Realizing he might have embarrassed her, Azul chuckles nervously and apologizes for saying something strange again. Recovering his composure, he adds that he would also love to see His Majesty in formal attire, sure that he would look splendid. Charlotte warmly agrees, stating that spending peaceful days by his side is the greatest happiness, and promises to dance with him someday. The peaceful atmosphere of Shulton Castle stands in contrast to the impending drama. Laurie interrupts the moment, handing a letter to Charlotte that has just arrived for her. Charlotte accepts the envelope, wondering curiously who would be writing to her now. Her face pales in shock as she recognizes the sender, realizing the letter is from Prince Theodore. The story returns to the majestic Shulton Castle, standing tall beneath a cloudy sky. Laurie warmly welcomes Lady Charlotte and His Majesty Azul back to the castle. He immediately informs them that a letter has arrived from Prince Theodore of the Kingdom of Rivera. A chill runs through Charlotte as she admits she has a bad feeling about receiving correspondence from him. The letter states that Theodore wishes to visit Shulton specifically to apologize for his past insults. Charlotte and Azul exchange worried glances, the sudden news casting a shadow over their mood. Azul strokes his chin in thought, agreeing that a visit solely for an apology suggests there is something hidden behind it. However, he notes that Rivera is a friendly nation, so they should provide an official welcome to maintain diplomatic relations. He leaves the final choice to Charlotte, who agrees to proceed with the visit out of respect for his judgment. A time skip transitions the story to 1 month later. Laurie announces that Prince Theodore will be arriving soon and checks on Charlotte's well-being. Charlotte assures him she is fine, her confidence anchored by the fact that His Majesty Azul is with her. Azul smiles gently at her, his presence a silent pillar of support. Charlotte looks at the courtyard, realizing this is the exact spot where she first met His Majesty. She reflects that if she hadn't broken her engagement with Theodore, she would still be suffering in Rivera today. Though she has no lingering feelings for the prince, she admits to feeling uneasy about meeting him again. Prince Theodore appears with a bouquet of roses, greeting Charlotte with a claim that he has missed her. He thanks them for the chance to apologize, though his demeanor feels strained. Charlotte is struck by his appearance, noting internally that he looks incredibly pale. His hollow expression gives off an unsettling, almost frightening aura. Azul steps forward to formally introduce himself as the King of Shulton, shielding Charlotte with his presence. Theodore responds with a nervous sweat, introducing himself as Theodore Rivera. Azul thanks him for the flowers on behalf of the castle, but Theodore awkwardly insists they are specifically for Lady Charlotte. Charlotte's smile freezes as she is forced to navigate the uncomfortable social interaction. She manages to accept the gesture politely, though her hesitation is evident. A servant guides the prince to the prepared guest room. As they walk down the hallway, they pass a mysterious figure cloaked in a heavy hood standing silently by the wall. Under the hood, the face of Verona is revealed, looking haggard and sporting a bruise on her cheek. The group settles into the drawing room, the tension palpable in the air. Theodore takes a sip of tea and his eyes light up with a disturbing intensity. He delusionally claims that Charlotte must have prepared it because she remembered his favorite flavor, asserting that no one understands him like she does. Laurie cheerfully interrupts the fantasy, revealing with a smile that he was actually the one who prepared the tea. Charlotte notices Laurie's reaction and realizes with a jolt that he seems genuinely afraid of His Majesty Azul. Theodore clears his throat loudly, visibly uncomfortable and eager to shift the focus back to himself. He announces that it is time to address the main matter at hand, attempting to regain control of the situation. With forced sincerity, Theodore apologizes to Charlotte for his past actions, claiming he deeply regrets what he did. Charlotte stares at him blankly, her expression unreadable as she processes his words. She calmly tells him it is all right and that she has moved past it, declaring her happiness in being engaged to King Azul. Theodore ignores her statement completely, signaling his servants to bring forward a stack of gifts. The boxes open to reveal extravagant, frilly dresses that look completely out of place in the rugged kingdom of Shulton. Charlotte thanks him politely but points out internally that these are things they have absolutely no use for here. Theodore criticizes her current attire, claiming she wears such plain clothes now compared to her beauty in Rivera. Charlotte firmly defends her outfit, explaining that these durable clothes are made for emergencies and she wears them because she likes them. Azul interjects with a bright smile, mentioning that Charlotte has actually started a new fashion trend in Shulton by adding embroidery. He cheerfully adds that they will use the gifted clothes as reference models for this new style, effectively dismissing the intended insult. A servant announces that dinner is ready, inviting everyone to the table. The group moves to the dining hall, but the atmosphere remains tense and uncomfortable. Suddenly, a loud, piercing bell rings out, causing everyone to freeze in alarm. Theodore panics immediately, screaming about a monster sighting and asking what they should do. Azul remains calm, instructing Theodore to stay put while he goes to check the situation, promising Charlotte he will return at once. As soon as Azul leaves, Theodore's demeanor shifts instantly from panic to calculated malice. He sneers at the food on the table, calling it primitive and pitying Charlotte for living in such a barren, monster-infested land. He drops the act completely, laughing that since King Azul is gone, there is no need to pretend anymore. Charlotte counters firmly, stating that Shulton is a wonderful country and she is very happy to be there. Theodore ignores her again, casually suggesting that she can come back to him if she wishes. Charlotte looks at him in disbelief, asking what on earth he is suddenly saying. He delusionally claims he has arranged everything for her to return as his fiancée, insisting she must feel like a prisoner here. Charlotte retorts internally that being with him was the true prison without freedom. Out loud, she rejects him unequivocally, stating she has never once thought of returning to him. She looks him dead in the eye and declares with finality that she loves His Majesty Azul. Theodore's face goes blank, his ego unable to comprehend the rejection. His expression twists into a dark scowl as he accuses her of being tainted by Shulton's savagery. He ominously declares that staying in Shulton is no longer possible for her, confusing Charlotte. The bell tolls again, 3 times in rapid succession, signaling a dire emergency calling for reinforcements, something that has never happened before. The scene opens with Charlotte, her eye wide with terror as the bell's toll echoes around her. Chaos erupts in the dining hall as Theodore and his entourage panic, their faces pale with sudden fear. A servant shouts a command to remain calm, though his own voice wavers, urging everyone to follow protocol and head to the shelters. Azul takes charge immediately, ordering Theodore to be escorted to the magic division where he can safely return to Rivera. Theodore, trembling and relieved to escape, agrees that staying in this monster-filled country is far too dangerous. Azul turns to Charlotte, instructing her to come with him to safety, his hand outstretched. They rush down the corridor, the sound of hurried footsteps echoing against the stone walls. Just as they are about to leave, Theodore pauses, his expression shifting from fear to a twisted, calculated look. He thanks Azul for the trouble and asks him to send his regards to His Majesty, feigning politeness. Suddenly, he grabs Charlotte's wrist, pulling her toward him with a jarring force that makes her gasp. She cries out in shock as she is yanked away from Azul's side. Laurie screams Charlotte's name in horror, reaching out too late to stop the abduction. Theodore drags Charlotte closer, his grip bruising as he demands she come back with him. Charlotte struggles against his hold, her face etched with panic as she screams for Laurie. Theodore shouts for her to stop resisting, his facade of civility completely gone. Suddenly, a cloaked figure steps out from the shadows, blocking their path. The hood falls back to reveal Verona, her face bruised and eyes filled with desperate tears. Verona draws a sword with trembling hands, pointing it at Charlotte and demanding she return to Rivera with Lord Theodore. Charlotte stares in disbelief, shocked to see the noble Lady Verona reduced to this state. Verona begs through her tears, warning that something terrible will happen if Charlotte doesn't marry Theodore. Charlotte notices the fresh wounds covering Verona's arms and legs, horrified by the visible abuse. Theodore sneers, revealing he enslaved Verona as punishment for betraying him, despite his generous offer to make her the mother of the nation. Charlotte is appalled, calling his actions madness for enslaving a fellow noble. She realizes with sickening clarity that the wounds on Verona's body are a direct result of Theodore's cruelty. Disgusted, she condemns him for dragging an innocent woman into his selfish schemes. Verona pleads desperately for Charlotte to run away with the Shulton servants while she can. Theodore interrupts, his voice dripping with malice as he warns Charlotte that monsters will devour her if she runs. He offers her a twisted choice: be eaten by beasts or live in comfort as his slave. Charlotte trembles, her fear giving way to a fierce, burning resolve. She looks down at Verona's broken form, refusing to accept this fate for either of them. With a defiant glare, Charlotte shouts that she would rather be eaten by monsters than live as his slave. The chapter ends on a close-up of her eye, burning with determination as she makes her choice. Theodore seizes Charlotte in a fit of rage, violently shaking her while screaming that she is an ungrateful woman. Laurie intervenes with fierce loyalty, grabbing the prince's arm and commanding him to get away from them immediately. Freed from his grasp, Charlotte breathes a quick word of gratitude to her brave maid for the timely rescue. A guard steps in to assist, ordering Laurie to take the other lady and evacuate to the shelter at once. As she is pulled away, Laurie promises to return and apologize properly, begging Charlotte to stay safe until then. Charlotte watches helplessly as her loyal servant disappears into the chaos of the evacuation, leaving her alone. Suddenly, a deafening crash shatters the air, the sound of breaking barriers signaling a new escalation. Panic intensifies as the bell tolls a fourth time, a signal so dire that it has never occurred in the kingdom's history. Fear grips the onlookers as they wonder if the city itself can withstand whatever calamity is unfolding. Charlotte's thoughts immediately fly to King Azul, her heart racing with worry for his safety on the front lines. She turns her gaze toward the horizon, where a massive pillar of ominous dark smoke rises into the sky. The sight of the smoke confuses her, raising more questions about the location of the attack. Analyzing the distance, she realizes the source of the destruction is strangely far from the valley where the battle should be. Dread settles in as she struggles to comprehend what on earth is happening to her new home. A chilling voice breaks her concentration as Theodore suddenly embraces her from behind, whispering that he has found her. Terrified, Charlotte recoils and demands to know what he has done with Laurie. The grim answer lies in the appearance of Rivera soldiers, implying her protector has been neutralized by his forces. Despite her fear, Charlotte stands her ground and declares that she will never return to Rivera, no matter the cost. Theodore merely smiles, his expression twisted with a dark and confident amusement at her defiance. He taunts her with a cruel inevitability, asserting that once the king dies, she will have no choice but to crawl back to him. Shocked by his words, Charlotte demands to know exactly what he means by such a threat. Delivering the final blow, Theodore reveals he received a report moments ago stating that King Azul is already dead. The world seems to stop as Charlotte processes the impossible news, barely able to whisper a question in her shock. Theodore gloats over her despair, asking if she realizes she now has nothing left to cling to in this world.